Hi guys, I am Bilal. I'm from Mumbai, so I did a very long journey to reach here and give this talk. I was supposed to give this talk a couple of months back, but since some health issues or some other things were coming up, and I couldn't come and give this talk. Uh, so, uh, so before we proceed, how many of you guys have done React Native or thinking of doing React Native or even played around with React Native, anything like that? Okay. Do you know what is React Native? What it can do? Okay. Let's go to the basics, complete basics of what is React Native, and then we'll catch up from there and see how things are making sense in going ahead. So we all know this whole one component of React Native, which is React. Okay, we all have been working, I guess. I assume that we all have at least some amount of working experience with React. Maybe production, maybe stage, maybe your own development thing and all. So, so React as a concept got introduced in Facebook because what the concept behind was is you learn once and you write it everywhere. So initially, with that thought, the team went ahead and wrote React. So if you remember, if you have used earlier versions of React, you remember you used to import. We all used to import directly from React, and we were done. Then came React DOM. Then we had to do import React with differently. So why was that change? Did that ring any bell to you guys? Why was that change? So I'll give you an idea. So after the React was done, they figured out that this is a very good abstract layer to write a view. So whatever, it was completely coupled with the DOM. So what happens is when React smartly figures out with virtual DOM and all those reconciliation things that what should update in the UI. That was a very smart algorithm, but it was closely coupled with web DOM. So what the team decided that let's use the React APIs to talk to React DOM. This way React becomes an independent activity. React becomes an abstract layer which can be attached to anything. So that's a brilliant idea. So if you see in an essence, they created an algorithm and made it a standalone thing, and you can utilize and do whatever you want to do with that. So the team went ahead, and what they did was they figured out that Facebook, Facebook has tons of developers, but still maintaining and building native application is a very resourceful task. I am not sure how many guys have seen this in the companies you guys are working, but it's a very difficult job as an iOS developer or as an Android developer to maintain a certain framework, to maintain that whole app, making change, getting it deployed, then the synergies, like the web team and the mobile team has to be on the same grounds. Whatever designs are coming, the implementation has to be same. So what they thought is, let's bring these two worlds together, figure out how these two things will work together. So the language these guys will talk will be in React. So because this amazing simplification of UI, like your whole UI is now a piece of jigsaw, or you can say your Legos, which fits together, but they works independently as well. So so what they did is they used the React algorithm, the React independent library, and created a bridge, and they started talking to the Java, and every phone has a JavaScript, JavaScript engine. Every phone ships with a JavaScript engine. It does nothing, it powers the web browsers we have. But what they thought is, the JavaScript engine will send the data, whatever is happening in the JavaScript engine, and it will be sent over the bridge, and that will get converted into the native code. So they don't. So what happens is you write in JavaScript, but it will get converted into native. So this is not an hybrid thing. This is not what we saw with Ionic, or what we saw with there were other frameworks, right? PhoneGap, right? So what those were doing was, those frameworks were doing, they were spinning up a browser and doing all the things what web browser does already. But what this guys is, they compiled a JavaScript, figure out what JavaScript mapped to what. So let's say they created a view component, and they knew that view component in iOS was UI view, whatever is the Objective-C equivalent to that, and they started mapping. So as the time progresses in that whole thing, they finalize the API. So the view was mapped to what is the equivalent, the text was mapped what was the equivalent, and so on and so forth. They started mapping everything, and they had a working prototype which was without recompiling on every change. They were just able to do changes on their JavaScript, and they were refreshing in the device, and the changes were live. So it saved, if you see, it saves a lot of time for a particular developer. So if a developer is making one change and compiling again, that's like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes of waiting. Accumulate that whole thing with the 500 developers, and you lose a whole week. Facebook can lose a whole week. So for this, they just saved 1 week of work, like with one change. So imagine on the scale they work on. So this thing introduced this thing opened a lot of new doors. They took this on a very serious note, and they built a whole suite which is called React Native. So React Native is a fairly simple library. So this is the official explanation of what React Native is. So React Native lets you build mobile apps using only JavaScript. It uses the same design as React, letting you compose a rich mobile UI from declarative components. So today, if you know React, you can go ahead and write a React Native app. Basic version, I'm sure basic version. I think more than basic version of native app, which will function as a CRUD operation. Lot of apps we see, not the mainstream apps, but the lot of apps we use internally or as in a company, in a corporate, they are mostly CRUD app use. And I'm sure most of the people will agree that 80% of the time we consume on phones rather than creating on phones, except for Instagram and all Twitter. But most of the content which is created are on desktop and consumed on mobile. So in my experience of last 2 years, I have done with Big Binary and other companies, a lot of read-only apps can be made with this. And as a developer, as a web developer, you can step into another world which has infinite possibilities of what you can build, and you can utilize this knowledge. And the best part is the moment you reach your constraint as a mobile developer, as a React Native mobile developer, you can introduce a native support. A native component can be built and used at the same time with React Native. So it's not that you have gone through the path of React Native, you can't come back, or you cannot introduce a native component. You can have an iOS team which only works on the crucial part of your app. Let's say you guys are building Instagram right now, and I hope somebody builds Instagram out of India. Okay, the part is, let's say the filter part, which is very which requires a lot of algorithms because image processing happens. So that team can only work on those particular part and all those things. The feed part is fairly trivial. You just have a view image component and some UI around that. That can definitely work can be worked by a web guy. Settings page can be worked by a web guy. And the best part is you have to just work on that particular part, and that gets shipped to iOS and Android at the same time. So that is the power it gives. So whatever I have discussed about the Instagram building part is already happening in Instagram. People, they are already leveraging this whole speed, and the more speed, development speed they get, the more things they can try out and fail and figure out what works for them. So that is why these people are on very cutting edge, because they can figure out what works, what doesn't work for them. So so the basic misconception a lot of people has is React Native has its own framework or its own way of doing things. It's not. It's just using your existing native UI which was already there, and it's leveraging that whole ecosystem, and it has an abstract layer written on top of it. So these companies are already using React Native in production. So we can't. There is no argument of will it work? Are there some companies trying it or no? That's not. If the housing is using, I've met housing people. They are using successfully React Native in housing mobile app. Myntra, I think one of the earliest adopter in India for React Native is Myntra. And Wix.com, these Wix guys have done, and they have contributed a lot to React Native ecosystem. And of course Facebook. I think one of the best part of React is it is always tested against Facebook and then released to public. And so your code is already tested against 1 billion people. So what more as a testing we need, right? So I think that it has a very significant background. A lot of companies are backing on React Native right now. This is the growth, npm downloads growth. So if you can see, it is rising every month, and it is going really, it is picking up really quick in the market. So after the talk after this is about how to build X and all those things, which I don't think we have time for. But coming back to the initial thing which I introduced, React as an algorithm has become so strong that think about this. Now there's React VR. People can write virtual reality applications using React because that algorithm is so strong. People are writing docx using React. So Microsoft document. So as a developer, I would think, what will I do by writing React, say Microsoft document? But that's not the point. The point is what all you can do with an abstract layer. You can have dynamic components with when compiled together generates a PDF, which is, I think, a very mind-blowing thing to understand. So let's say we have a certain platform. You have a very certain platform, and you have a platform-specific APIs. You can use that React algorithm. You can use that React standalone app and output the result as per your convenience. So there can be a scenario in future. That is what I'm thinking. That there can be a scenario in future where everyone writes React, but the output has a different thing. Let's say the DevOps guys, they write React and say these are the things which should happen. So when I say that, what does that mean? They will open the server tag. Inside they will write Apache tag. This is hypothetically thinking, but at the end when they compile, they will get a compiled server out of it. Even that is the extent it can take you. And the best part is you don't need, the learning curve is gone. You just have to start importing. Let's say there's a new person joining in your company. You just have to give the person that do you know React? Yes. Do these things and you're sorted. You have written you are a new DevOps guy. You are a new front-end guy, back-end guy. So the possibilities are huge when you have a abstract layer which everyone talks, which has the same language across. So like think of it as a linguistic. in the linguistic manner. I am using English because everyone understands English. That's the possibilities it can have. So yeah, cool. This is me. I am an independent consultant. You can follow me, or yeah, you can read about this stuff. I write about these kind of stuff. So yeah, cool. Any question?
Yes. On React Native, we have, on one end of the spectrum, we have high performance applications and probably won't use React Native because they want to use the Objective-C iOS APIs directly.
Native, yeah, native APIs.
High performance.
Right.
On the other hand, we're talking about CRUD applications that potentially may use React Native. But Google this year started promoting PWAs, really heavily.
Right.
And PWAs can have offline support. They have application care.
True.
They have application storage. They have a management file. They have icons. Their look and feel is just like a native application.
True. True.
Without, and you can just reuse everything that you've done on the web right away. So,
True.
Why would so React Native PWAs? What we pick?
So there's a short answer, there's a long answer. So short answer is React Native. Why? Because see, any transitions takes a lot of time. So Google introduced a lot of things earlier as well, but it takes a human behavior. Human behavior is very hard to change. Now we have apps. People are so the psychology is so fit on the app part, and there are support. The operating system has to start accepting a lot of things, because right now there are still a lot of APIs, native APIs, which is yet to be exposed and yet to be decided. So the short-term answer is React Native. If you have the resources to invest in a mobile-friendly thing, if you have right now in a company, you are thinking on, okay, what should we do? We want to go mobile, but do we go PWA or React Native? I would definitely tell you that go React Native. PWA is still a very experimental stage. People are still fiddling around, only housing, Tribu, these kind of giants who have great resources can afford this kind of PWA. Cool. So anything else? Any React Native? Just whenever you have time, React Native is will take hardly half an hour or 45 minutes.
I have another question. So we have discussed PhoneGap and Ionic as well, and obviously they're probably still in development.
Yeah.
So where are they headed? If they know that
Sure.
things are slipping out of their hands,
Sure.
then where are they headed?
So I think personally React Native is not the silver bullet. There will never be a silver bullet in any space. So I read a company's success story. What they have done is they wrote a responsive web app. They took that code and put it in PhoneGap and just pushed it to the Play Store, and it worked perfectly fine without any changes. So if the catch was they did a phenomenal job of writing a responsive app. The app worked in any screen any screen resolution. So then they had a luxury to do it in that way where they did not have to invest time. So I would say whatever works perfectly in your resources, whatever fit as a company. I understand that they have certain limitations, that this is the time we have, this is the resource we have, and this is the manpower we have. So depending on that, choose wisely. Don't just go with the hype. And I have plans to write a book, small ebook, which will take you from zero to give you a confidence on how to write a React Native production level app which you can ship. I have yet to finalize the whole spec and everything, but if you keep a tab on my website, you will probably get news on those things. Cool. Thank you guys. You are a phenomenal audience.